Oh my god, this is great. That's from. Anyone know what that's from?
Oh my gosh, wait. Last Friday night, Katy Perry.
No, it's from. But I think there is something in that. But
No. That no.
um,
Sorry. Wait. Hold on. Give me a sec.
okay.
Lazy
I will give him
song.
a sec.
Bruno
Yes,
Mars.
yes,
And
yes.
for some reason, that was
That was quick on your feet. That was quick on your feet, which is perfect for this episode.
lots of pressure.
So I'm not sure if any of you are aware. No one be alarmed. But Lady Gaga has completed 2 nights of the Chromatica Ball Summer Stadium tour.
How is your I don't know what you want to call it. Your time
Hiatus?
away from your hiatus away from social media, Ben.
It's actually been very successful.
Well,
I
that's
know
good.
diddly squat about this tour, and the past 2 tours that I've tried to avoid spoilers for, I basically knew everything going in. So I'm very proud of myself. And I got Be Real, which has been awesome. How are you liking it?
I love the app, like I said in our social media episode, and I also think this would be a good time to ask: do you miss anything about social media being off of it? I mean, you have Be Real, and I know. Let's just inform our listeners that Nick plays a game of Survivor, I think, on Instagram. And so he made a specific Instagram account just so he could continue to play the game but not have spoilers. Although I feel like the algorithm might at some point start throwing you Lady Gaga stuff. But
I mean, I haven't looked up a single thing, like literally a single thing. But that's a good thank you for bringing the Survivor game up, because that actually fits well into a cringe story I have that fits today's topic. So we'll get to that later. But how are you? Yeah, no, I'm really liking Be Real. Being off of social media has actually not been hard at all. I deleted the app, so there have been a few times where I've like gone to the app and it hasn't been there.
Yeah.
I guess Instagram, I have the backup account and my alarm to make sure I'm awake. But Instagram, I have the backup account, but I'm logged out of my other accounts. So it's been great. I feel like I have more time to do all of the, all of life's important things, like watch Netflix.
Sure.
And yeah.
Do you feel like
been
you're
my
walking on
backup.
eggshells because you use Facebook? What social media platforms do you use at work?
Facebook and Instagram, but Instagram, I don't get anything targeted to me for the bank because I primarily, when I'm posting, it's on the computer, so I'm not looking up Lady Gaga.
Is that through like the Meta Business Suite you post through?
Yes,
Okay.
and Facebook Creator Studio. But I love how this has become an interview about my
Well,
social
I'm
media.
just
hiatus.
I'm
This is
just
great.
genuinely curious because I feel like this is an update that you have in your life and we haven't talked about it yet. So
No, I agree. I just didn't want to
take up time.
take up time, but
there are
yeah.
only 2 hosts of this show, so I mean, one of us
Yes.
has to be interesting in order for the show to be interesting.
This is true. Well, we're learning through Be Real that no one's really interesting, because I'm loving how just blah everything is, and it's so real.
Isn't it
I
great?
love it. The first one did me so dirty. I was in the shower.
Yeah.
And I took the picture, and it wasn't even it was a late picture for me. I didn't take it when the prompt said, because I had just I literally made the account. When you make the account, it says take your first picture.
If
So
the
was I
notification had gone off
Yes.
that day already. Yeah.
Right. So was I making the account in the shower? Absolutely. But yeah. But yeah, no, I do kind of feel like I'm walking on eggshells on Facebook, even though I shouldn't. Instagram, I don't, because I literally have not looked up anything. And private browsing, let me just tell you, is a blessing, because YouTube is where I feel the most, unarmed.
True. So do you just always have private browsing windows now?
That's what I've been doing recently, yeah, just because I don't want to see anything. I want to be so excited. I've heard so many cool things. Not cool things. I've just heard that I'm going to love the show. But how are you? You went to a concert this week.
I did go to a concert this week. It must be concert season right now.
It is. It is summer's concert season.
Yes. I went to the One Republic concert, I Need to Breathe, and it was so great. It was so wonderful. I went with some friends and some family, and it was wonderful. Like, my entire family, I've gotten my entire family, I don't know if you've gotten your entire family to love Lady Gaga, but I've gotten my entire family to love One Republic.
I haven't.
Oh, you're still working on it?
I'm still working on it.
It'll come together.
Thanks.
But my entire family loves One Republic, and we love Ryan Tedder and the entire band. And they just put on a really great show, and they're one of those bands where you can bring anybody. Maybe like you don't listen to One Republic as religiously as I do, but you can bring anybody to that concert, and they'll come out of that concert being like, wow, I didn't realize how many songs I knew about that they have. Or since Ryan Tedder writes a lot of songs for other artists, he does those songs at the concert as well. For instance, he wrote Halo by Beyonce, and Burn by Ellie Goulding, and Rumor Has It by Adele, and Maps by Maroon 5, and
great song.
What was the other one he did? Bleeding Love, Leona Lewis.
Great
song. And there was one more that he did. Oh, Lil Nas X. Lil Nas X. Someone to love me. That's what I really want. He wrote that. I love
that song. I resonate with that song so much. That's been my Tinder soundtrack song. Whatever you
That's awesome.
Pick. You know, though, like, I don't even know what it's called, but
like Anthem. Life Anthem. Yeah. Oh yeah, Life soundtrack.
That's the song that I've picked.
I don't know.
I love that song a lot. I
yes.
don't either anymore.
But and also as kind of an inside joke for this podcast team, he wore his Mad Tasty hat the entire concert. So
I love that. I feel like listeners, if they've listened to the whole show, should know. I feel like we've talked about that.
Have we? Basically, we were just fooling around one time, the three of us, and we were watching a YouTube video with Ryan Tedder, and he was reviewing like amateurs who wrote songs on YouTube, and he has a drink company known as Mad Tasty, and we just kind of use that phrase wherever we see fit nowadays, just, you know, as a little inside joke. So
yeah,
it was great.
Just a little one.
Just a little one. And Dan reminded me of this. But yeah, no, I went to a concert this week. I feel great, and I'm actually wide awake, even though it's early for us. This is early for us, but I'm very, very excited for this episode.
I am too.
I'm excited to get into it. But as always, unless you had anything more to add to your kind of check-in here, what are you grateful for this week, Nick?
Honestly, I am grateful for producer Dan Ashley in the production room, the virtual production room, just because, well, not only for, I don't know if listeners know this, but I had to edit an episode earlier in the month, and it was difficult, to say the least. But more than that, I'm just very appreciative of, well, actually, this goes for Justin too, honestly. I'm appreciative for both of you, because I did not want to get up this morning. When I was really hoping that when we said, Dan, does this time work for you? He was going to say, no, can we do a different time? But he said yes, and I'm up now at 8:15, and I have such a full day ahead of me of just, like, things I can do to be productive. So I'm very grateful for both of you.
We love that. A productive Saturday.
Yeah.
Happy for you.
Thanks. What are you grateful for?
Thank you. No, that sounded so rude. I am grateful for Dan as well. I'm grateful for you, Nick, too, because I feel like, I don't know if this has really been true, but I texted this in our little group chat. I feel like I haven't been pulling my weight lately. I don't know if it's because of summer or what, or just being busy, and I can talk more about this when we get into the episode, but I'm just grateful for the both of you for encouraging me. This is like, you know, we've talked about this before. This podcast it's a passion project for me, and yes, I think I can say the same for both of you. And so just encouraging me to like keep doing it, and the planning and the work that goes into it, even when it even when you get busy, it might become more of a hassle than it is like fun. But I still enjoy doing it, and it's definitely way more fun than it is a chore ever for me. So
Same.
just encouraging me and reaching out and being patient with me when I'm being a pain in your asses.
You're not, though.
And Dan, I right there with Nick, I appreciate all of the work that you do, because Nick and I get on here and spew our bullshit for about an hour, and then you take as much time as you need to make it coherent and make it make sense. So we appreciate you, and you add your little flares with the music, and it's just, you make the podcast what it is. And so I'm just grateful for that. And then finally, I guess the last thing which relates to this episode is I'm grateful for, I'm going to phrase it as my education and my past experiences, because we're going to be talking about interviews and job interviews and the interview process, and also potentially the job application process, which I've been in the depths of right now. I don't know. I just feel like I've surprised myself by how prepared I am for these types of things, just because of experiences that I've had recently or in my past. So I just want to give some gratitude, or verbalize some gratitude for those and getting myself to where I am today.
Woo! I was gonna be like, yes, Mrs. Do, but you didn't say it explicitly. But you know,
she appreciates her shout out. She oftentimes listens to the episode when she is like cooking, or when she's just like walking around the house doing some things for the house or for our family or whatever. And I'll be somewhere else in the house and I'll just hear, "There's my shout out," and so it's really,
I love that.
It's really funny. So I'm sure she appreciates that, even though I didn't mention her explicitly that time.
I love that. Let's talk about interviewing and corporate culture and jobs. Shall we?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
You, honestly, I would just want to ask, let's start by saying that you have been interviewing this week. You've gone on a few interviews. What has that been like? Because for me, it was the worst experience in the world.
Yeah, so I guess since the beginning of the summer, and by the way, you were asking that question, I just realized that it's been a year since we've been recording this podcast, so that's super exciting.
Has. Yes, I wanted to say, I was going to text you guys that actually when I realized it, but I was like, oh, it's the 21st. Our first episode came out on the 19th. So.
But, well, happy anniversary, late anniversary.
Happy anniversary, and happy anniversary to our listeners.
Yes. Thank you for being with us for a year.
Sticking with us for a year.
Anyway, as you can see, we still have not mastered the art of staying on topic.
Let's stay on topic.
Let me go back to the question. Yeah, so since the beginning of summer, or really since May, I've been applying to different jobs. And I hadn't heard anything back until, I would say, the end of June. So that was kind of like nervous, like what's going on here. But I guess that's just, I don't know, maybe my HR friends can let me know. Is that typical? Is that not typical? Maybe it's different in different sectors of the workforce, industries, whatever. But yeah, so the last 3 weeks I've been interviewing, and it's been very interesting. But the first one that I had, I was very, very, very nervous. And I actually used Loyola's Career Center resources I think it's called Big Interview. And that was helpful, just kind of let myself know or inform myself of what people are looking for, how I should portray myself, how long I should talk for, because you know that I talk for a very long time, if I should tell them that I have a podcast with explicit episodes, all those types of things. And it's been really great, actually. The first, Big Interview. Thank you, Dan. The first ones, it was kind of unclear, but basically the jobs that I applied for, usually a recruiter reached out first, someone who's definitely from HR, either within the company or outside of the company, and then they would be like, hey, can we set up a phone conversation to talk more about the role, or a phone interview, they'd call it, or one of those two terms, either a phone conversation or a phone interview. And then I would go into it being prepared for a full interview, and they'd be like, okay, do you have a valid driver's license? Are you allowed to work in the US? Do you have COVID vaccine? Like those types of questions. Then sometimes they'd ask about my goals for the position. But other than that, those were the questions. Then it's like, all right, well, next steps is to set up an interview with the hiring manager. And I was like, oh, okay, so I guess that would be considered round one. And then I would have an interview either in person or virtually with the hiring manager. That would be more substantive, more hour-long type of thing, maybe a little bit longer, maybe a little bit less. And yeah, I can talk more about that, but that's been my kind of general experience. I applied to about 6 or 7 jobs, and I have gotten like 5 or 6 interviews, and the ones that I haven't gotten, I just haven't heard back at all. So I'd say no news is good news. But yeah, so that's been my general experience. I don't know how it compares to yours from last year or 2 years ago or whatever.
Well, I was just going to say that, yeah, I had a similar experience in terms of, like, I would have, like, a phone-type interview, but it was, again, more general, and I don't think it was with the hiring manager. It might have just been, like, the head of HR or someone in HR just
like
kind of gathering my information, and then presenting it, I'm assuming, to the hiring manager, who I would then have an interview with. And I think I had a phone interview for the job that I currently work. I think I had a phone interview and an in-person interview.
Okay.
Which is coming up on a year, just like the show. Because in our first episode, I said I have an interview. I don't think I'm going to get the job. And I did. And I started work on August 2nd. So
that's wild. That was fast.
Wasn't it?
Wow.
It was very, yeah. So let me back up for a second. You gave us your general experience. Have you learned, what do you have for advice? Have you gained any, like, in this round of interviewing, what would you give as advice to somebody who's interviewing for positions? I know you haven't signed anything. You don't,
Sure. Well, I want to say that at recording this, as of recording this episode, I've already gotten 2 offers.
Yes.
Which is
you did tell me that.
Very exciting.
Yes. Congratulations. I just didn't want to say that myself.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that. Advice. Well, I think a lot for my first one, it was a lot of nerves, right? Yeah. Because as people, I mean, maybe some people are better at this than I am, but I don't, at least I try not to in a day-to-day basis. You don't sell yourself all the time. And I think in the first episode, or whenever we've talked about this prior, I said this too, because you have to sell yourself in an interview, but it's not something that I do on a day-to-day basis of, I'm so great and here's the reasons why. But you have to do that in an interview, right? So
he says that off camera. No.
Yeah. Off air, exactly. So advice that I would give is be yourself is the number one thing. You have to be yourself. Like, I understand that people are like, it's okay to embellish on a resume or sell yourself on an application, things like that. But personally, I'm most comfortable when I am 100% authentically myself. And, sometimes I'm told that I'm too honest sometimes. Just about like my flaws or this is the type of person that I am. But I think that's worked in my favor because I think it makes me more approachable, or at least I feel it's made me more approachable in the interviews, because you might think an interview format is the interviewer asks you a question and then you answer. And by the way, according to Big Interview, and I agree with this, your answer should only be about 2 minutes long. Because you want to be concise. That's the longest. It can be much shorter, but you want to be concise. You want to stay on topic, and you want to, not ramble. So in my interviews, I've been myself, and I've like randomly told jokes and kind of gone off of the interview asks a question. I answer the question, And I even brought up, Nick, you'd appreciate this. So they asked about like my organizational skills, and I said, well, so let me first say this. I have an Android, and the interviewers laughed. And I was
That's
saying
good.
that my calendar is like the main thing on my home screen, the calendar widget, and that's kind of like the heart of my day. It leads my day, and it's like I know what's coming next. It helps with my productivity, helps with my organization. But I tried to. I didn't mean to. If we were having a conversation, I would probably make a joke like that. So I think being yourself is one thing. That was a lot of words for me to just say.
That's
Be
okay.
yourself.
You're saying, keep it concise.
Keep it concise. Don't go off topic. I definitely went off topic, and I definitely wasn't concise.
That's why you have a podcast.
Exactly. This is where I can go off topic and things like that.
Yes.
My other advice, I think, is be yourself, but also be confident in yourself. And that might take some practice. And I think practice, you told me this when I was asking for your advice, is practicing your answers and practicing answering potential questions or general questions that you might receive allows you to have that confidence. And why I think that's important is because when you have the confidence in what you're saying, your nerves kind of go away, and you realize that this interview is not life or death. Because I think that's also something that comes up. That might be a third thing, or it might be, have confidence A. But no, like understanding the context of the interview, that if you make a mistake, or if you don't do well in one interview, or I don't know, you get asked a question, you don't know how to answer it, or anything like that. First off, I fully believe that there's a plan for everybody, but there's some gray to that. But I think if you're meant to have a job, you're going to get the job. And if you mess up, or if a company doesn't, hire you or give you an offer or something like that, then maybe there's a reason that it wasn't there. So I've kind of had that in my head too, and it lowered the stakes for me. So it took some pressure off, and that's been really helpful. So in summary, I guess it's just be authentic, be yourself, have confidence, and remember that an interview for a company is not, it's not life or death. Like, it may be your dream job, it may be for a dream company, but you could always apply for a different position or at a different time for that company, or find the same job at a different company. It's not life or death. So those are my big three, I think. I don't know if you agree with them, or if you, what yours would be maybe when you did it.
Yeah, there was definitely overlap. And yes, when you called me and asked if I had any advice, the very first thing I said was practice. And that sounds so generic. It sounds so like an easy answer to give, but I really mean it. When I started interviewing, I had interviewed before, but when I started seriously practicing interviewing or even interviewing for full-time positions, it was around February 2020, I would say, and I was so bad. I remember one specifically. I was in campus ministry, which for those that don't know, that's in a basement. And I had set up, it was a phone interview, so it wasn't even on Zoom. And I was like, yes, this is going to be so much easier because they won't be able to see me. I can read my answers. It was not, in fact, easy. Service in the basement was horrible, which you could probably have guessed. But she asked me a question. It might have even been something easy. The interviewer, by the way, asked me a question like, what do you like about the company? And though I had the website in front of me, I had practiced beforehand. I wasn't just like looking. That would be the worst interviewing. I don't even know. That would be the worst interview ever if I was on their website searching for an answer as they had asked
Their
me.
mission statement.
But, literally. But I froze because I was new to it, and I hung up the phone and pretended that there was a poor connection.
Oh.
So that was not good. Did it take some of the blame off me? A little, but at the same time, that says that I wasn't prepared in a spot that I knew wouldn't. I mean, obviously mistakes can happen and nothing, you can't plan for everything, but being in a basement probably wasn't the best choice. But that was one of my first interviews. Honestly, going on interviews, even if you don't necessarily want the job, is great practice. I firmly believe that is how I got the job that I did, that I have now. But I also believe there's an element of luck in there, and I'll get to that in a second. But I practiced, and I want to give a shout out to my supervisor at Born This Way Foundation, Me Too, who was extremely helpful and helped me practice for interviewing when I didn't even work at the foundation anymore. She was great, and we would just Zoom, and I would look up, potential questions, and I had answers in front of me, but each time I practiced, I would read it less and less and less until I had it memorized in a way that it wasn't scripted, because you don't want to sound like robotic either. But my advice there would be to prepare more answers than questions that you would think they would ask, so you can cross-reference and pull from different, because you don't know the questions they're going to ask all the time. Sometimes they'll, send you the questions beforehand, but sometimes you have no clue what they're going to ask. And that's when you can cross-reference. Or if you forget something that you were going to say about one answer, you can say, oh, and that reminds me of this. Also I really liked what you said about keeping it under 2 minutes, which is something I also have a difficult time with, as you can probably see. We both have been struggling with that today. But yeah, I would say practice, because I got good at interviewing. And I don't think it's a natural skill, to be honest. I think it's something that really, really needs to be worked on. And honestly, if I were to interview right now, I'm sure my skills have gone back a lot, have regressed, because it's something that you have to continuously do. It's a habit.
Yeah, it's like a social skill. But it's a different type of socializing. Like, I think it helps that I was an extrovert and I am good on the spot with just talking socially with people in informal settings. So then translating that to a formal setting, I think, it still took definitely a little bit work, but it was an easier jump than I realized it was going to be once I got rid of the nerves. But it being able to preparing those answers, I liked what you said, like preparing more answers for different types of questions, I think was helpful for me too, because I did cross-reference those answers with the other questions. And even if it was like, I had one question, the positions that I'm applying for, I'd be working with young people, with children, adolescents. And so one question that I was asked was, this is a question that it sometimes trips people up. It's not a trick question whatsoever, but tell me an experience you have with youth. And I was like, oh, okay. And I told a story about when I was coaching tennis and a story from that. And then in a different interview, I used that answer because I talked about how there was a tennis player of mine was having a really tough day, just an off day tennis-wise, and they stormed off the court, and how I handled that situation. And in a different interview, I used that same story to answer the question of how do you handle someone that you're working with, a client, say a teenager that you're working with that just doesn't want to be there. I'd use the same story, but for a different thing. So I don't know if that's exactly what you were saying, but I totally get what you're saying about have different kind of stories lined up. And if I somehow pulled that story out of my ass, but if you're better when you prepare, then have kind of those stories or experiences, I don't know, prepared
on the back burner. Yeah. And honestly, I feel like the more you do interview and the more you practice, the faster you're gonna pull them out, honestly.
Yeah
Like, it becomes more natural. By the end, I was very confident in my answers. And I also suggest, especially if you're on Zoom, and we can talk about the difference between phone video and in person, but especially when you're on Zoom, animation and excitement, make sure you show that, because I feel like it doesn't translate as well through a screen. I think it's easier to show in person than it is on a screen. Also, who looks professional on a screen, let's be honest, on Zoom? Like, the camera's angled, like, it's just, you're not looking at the camera, even though you're looking at them, it doesn't look like you're looking at them. So just showing passion, any form of authentic passion that you can find for this job, even if you're not interested in the job, just find like one thing that you're excited about authentically, or as authentically as you can be, and show that, I think, is another.
Or even pretend that the interviewer is the most interesting person you've ever talked to in your entire life, and that's like, oh my god, I'm so excited that I'm talking to Lady Gaga right now, and I'm like just always smiling and always like, you know, like obviously I wasn't talking to Lady Gaga. I would have told you, Nick. You might have even known before I knew, but
yes,
but I think that's a huge thing too, and that's something that actually someone affirmed me on over a Zoom interview. So I had spoken with this person over the phone. And then we scheduled a Zoom interview, and she was saying that one of the most difficult things about the job that I was applying for is keeping adolescents engaged. So, for example, I'll give you remember when you were 16, right? 16, you might have been, you did what you want. Maybe you were a little angsty. Maybe you didn't want to do what your parents told you. Like, I don't know. This is like typical angsty teenager things. And she said that I would be working somewhere I don't want to say the role, but I would be working in the mental health field. And so she said the biggest problem with the people in your role, or the biggest issue that people run into, is keeping teenagers and kids in that age group engaged. Or, oh, I'm just here because my parents told me I have to be here. Or, I'm just here because my therapist told me that I have to be here. But that takes a lot of energy to keep the kids engaged. And so she said, when I talk to you over the phone, when I talk to you on Zoom, I could just feel that you have energy. And I think that just being enthusiastic and being animated over the phone, which is tricky, and over Zoom, helped me, and that was one of the offers I actually got, helped me with that position, because I was just, here we go, I'm excited, let's go.
Of course. And it's a good thing that you mentioned the phone too, because you can do the same thing on the phone. It's somebody just at my work actually just used it in a testimonial. Basically they said smiling over the phone. The employee was smiling over the phone, and when you smile on the phone, honestly, it animates it just naturally. It's almost like muscle memory animates your voice, makes you sound more excited. And you can do that in person too, but body language is the easiest to show in an in-person interview.
Right.
They're also the longest. I feel like in terms of differences, in person's the longest. Phone is usually the shortest to me. And then, just in my experience, and then video is like the hybrid between the two.
Interesting. I've actually had video be the longest. And
yeah,
I mean, I've only had a few in-person ones.
Yeah.
So I might not be able to have as much leverage as you do in terms of like speaking from experience. But actually, I think phone was hybrid, video was the longest, and in person, believe it or not, was the shortest, because I think they wanted to get through the questions, or at least it could have been the interviewer style too, of just not responding to necessarily what I'm saying, except for with like body language and smiles and maybe some chuckles at what I said. But there wasn't much, I call it intermission moments in between the format of question answer, except for if I made a joke or things like that. But yeah, in the video format, there was, I would say something, and then the interviewer would say, "Oh, I really liked what you said about this," or resonate with that. And again, that could be interviewer style too. But.
Yeah, no, it totally could be. I want to just acknowledge that you asked me for my tips, and I think we mentioned the number 3, and I gave you 1 and just rambled about it. So we're not taking our own advice this episode. But my other 2 tips, if it's in an in-person setting, I would say bring something tangible always. Even during COVID, there were some, they say always bring your resume and cover letter, no matter what, just always bring it. But
so you mean actually bringing something?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
I'm not saying a gift. I'm just saying in terms of something appropriate.
I brought you flowers.
That you would bring, right? They're get out.
Yeah.
Nope. No, but that was the only time where I was do I bring my, do I bring my resume? Do I shake this person's hand? Are we not doing that? It's the middle of the pandemic. But even if you bring it, and you don't hand it to them. Just show, I feel like showing them that you are prepared and you have something, like, I have my resume, or you could even say, like, I wasn't sure due to COVID, I didn't want to make anyone uncomfortable, so I brought it on a flash drive. This is like a little, just because you can email it to them. You can email it to them, but that's then putting it on them to print out. And I did that. I know that because I did it once. I emailed them. I was like, I wasn't sure because of COVID. And they were like, oh, that's fine. But then they didn't have my resume in front of me. They had to print it out. And it just, like, you could feel the, like, not awkwardness, because I did have that, like, COVID crutch to be like, oh, it's, I wasn't sure. And that was true. But,
Yeah.
I think having something, it just shows an element of being prepared. Also, like, taking notes, having a notebook can be helpful without writing down everything that they're saying, because that can just get annoying. And then my last piece, this isn't necessarily as advice, it's just more like a I don't know, like a reminder, is that there is an element of luck to this. Truly, you could have I was just talking about this with my sister. You could have a phenomenal answer in one interviewer's eyes, and the next interviewer might just hate it.
Yeah.
Like, there is an element of luck. Not every job is going to be obsessed with your answers. Obviously, there could be somebody like, you could give the two same interviews for, let's just pretend that it's the same company twice, but they don't know of each other. Somebody could interview that does a better job than you at one of those variants, I guess, and then you could be the best one in the other variant. Like, there is an element of luck there. You can do everything that you think you should be doing and still not get the job. Or, I mean, a lot of people know people, like, sometimes there's a connection there that you might not have. I even say this about just, the job that I have now. Had the woman walked a little slower in the parking lot at my restaurant, that had then called 3 weeks later and said, hey, would you like to interview for this position? I know you said you were in marketing. I wouldn't have had her at my table, and I wouldn't have known about the position.
Right. That's a good one. And yeah. I think too, it's, in a way, applying for a job in the interview process it's a chemistry test, right? You don't know necessarily what they're looking for in the position, and you also don't know what type of personality or what addition to their team, what their team dynamic is. And when I say chemistry test, I'm saying, like, how do you jive with who's already on staff?
Yes.
The chemistry that you have, right? The actors often talk about the chemistry they had on screen, but for this, it would be the chemistry that you might have could potentially be the interviewers, or what the interviewer for the job thinks how you would jive with the members who are already employed. So you're right in saying that it's very much, there's an aspect of luck. And, if like I said in the beginning, if you don't get an offer from a company or after an interview, or don't move on to the next step or whatever, maybe it wasn't the right fit for you at that time too.
Yeah, exactly.
Being resilient is super important, right? Like, you're not gonna be perfect at everything and every part of every interview, and they're gonna make mistakes, and we're human and all that stuff. But if you get every offer after every interview, that's incredible. Like, I'm super proud of you. Really, really, like, that's incredible. But also, if you don't, and more likely than not, if you don't get an offer after an interview, or if you don't move on to the next step, that's also okay too, and I'm still proud of it.
I was gonna say, even if you don't get all of them, just know that Justin from Point of View is not super proud of you.
I'm really disappointed. No. It's super, like, it has nothing to do with your, I mean, maybe there's a fraction of a percentage of a chance that it's something to do with your qualifications, but I think if you make an interview, you're probably already deemed as qualified. But
right. Or you could have just not prepared enough, or you could, like, I don't want to reverse it and say, like, because we just said there's an element of luck, it's not, like, it's not a reflection of you as a person, which that is always true. It's not a reflection of you as a person, at least in my opinion. But, like, I go back to this, like, do we really put, I mean, I'll speak for myself, do we really put 100% into everything we do? Like, I mean, I don't know, maybe you do, maybe you give 100% every waking moment of the day. I personally know I don't. I strive to do my best, and we say that, but, like, are there times that I'm tired? Yeah. Are there times that I'll, like, look at a text when I should be doing something? Yeah. And I think that's pretty realistic, to be honest. Like, I don't know, maybe and honestly, if you give 110%, every waking moment of the day, please tell me and I will applaud you.
No, I don't. I mean, I try to, but
Exactly.
But there are times when you have it's called energy conservation.
Right, and I'm not gonna. Right, there's sometimes that we just don't try our best, and it's like if that happened in an interview, like, I mean, I would recommend to do the best you can, but if you give like as much as you can in the moment, and it's not, what you typically can give, or even if you didn't, like you got, you learned for next time. I wanted to talk about bringing up questions for I wanted to bring up having questions for the company, and the reason I wanted to do that is because you messaged it in the chat and I thought it was great. So really, Justin wanted to bring up having questions prepared for the company. I'll let you go first because that's also something I was going to mention.
Sure. So I think it's really important for the end of the interview, there might be like a awkward space lull at the end where it's like, oh, I think that's all I have. Do you have any questions for us? And what I find for a skill to have at that point of the interview is definitely bring something to write, whether it's in person, over the phone, or over Zoom. And on that last point, when they ask you about that, take some time to write out. Don't take like minutes, but take like a few seconds to write out a few bullet points. And even if you don't have anything to write, just like pretend you're writing even to gather your thoughts if you don't have questions prepared. But I think you should have questions prepared, because showing that you have questions prepared for them shows that you have done your research on the job and on the company. Yes. And they can be questions that you prepared before the interview, but also don't be afraid to come up and write down some questions that might have come up as you've been interviewed? No, as you've been interviewed.
As you've been interviewed. Yeah, that's a great point. And honestly, like, what does it say if they're like, do you have any questions? You're like, nope. They just gave you a bunch of new information.
Right.
That you definitely did not know all of it going in. So you really don't have any questions. That's probably going to tell them, like, A, you're not as interested in the job as they would like you to be, or you weren't listening, or C, you don't care, which is, I guess, a mix of the two. But yeah, having questions is awesome. And to piggyback off of that, I will say now, having worked in a company that I've interviewed for, and like you have too, obviously, because you've interviewed and you've worked, like you've had jobs, meaning you've interviewed, but there's always something, or at least, and I won't say always, but I'm assuming always, there is something that the company is very excited about. Right now, it's a certain, I'm not going to give examples just for, privacy purposes, but there's an account that the bank I'm working for, a type of account that the bank is now offering that they're very excited about. And I believe if somebody came in with knowledge of that, the bank would be all over it, because they're very, like, they want to get it out. They want to get it out. They're excited about it. They've been working on it. Like, they are passionate about it. So I feel like when you appeal to something, this is just in everyday life, when you appeal to something that someone's passionate about, if you start talking about Lady Gaga, I promise you, I'm not going to walk away. Like, you'll have me all night.
Yeah.
So, and speaking of her, this was just a thought that popped into my head when you were like, even if you're not writing questions, pretend you're like writing questions. So I'm like, oh yeah, no, very interesting. I'd rather be dry, but at least I'm
no. Just I heart LG. Heart LG. The last thing I want to bring up for questions is I would also recommend, you could have the prepared questions, but now I'm actually encouraging you to come up with at least one question from the information that you just heard in the interview, because of what Nick just said, that you just were given lots of information that you definitely didn't know everything. So having a question shows that you listened and shows that you're interested in the company and what they just had to say. And from my own experience these past couple of weeks, I actually asked a question that I didn't prepare ahead of time. I came up with on the spot, and the question was, what characteristics and attributes and traits would you say someone who is applying for this role makes them successful or maybe less successful, based on what I heard? And that, sure, I could have prepared that question beforehand, but I didn't. but I said it based on what I heard, and I actually stumped them, and they said, "Wow, that was a really good question. I've never been asked that question before."
That's awesome.
And they had to pause and think about their answer. And so I don't know. It was like it was kind of like an affirmation. Like, okay, I think that was a solid one. That would be helpful. So I don't know. I think I went from, you can prepare questions beforehand or you can come up with them in on the spot, but I would say do both. I'm now saying
for sure,
encouraging you to do both.
I would say prepare 3 and maybe ask 2 of them that are prepared and 2 that are new. Or even 1 that was prepared and... No, because you want to show that you were prepared. I would say like 2 and 2, but usually I ask 3. I don't go more than 3. So I guess just feel it out in the moment.
It depends on timing, too, if you have time
right.
for them.
Right. Yeah.
The last couple things that I wanted to cover were just kind of like small little tidbits. The first thing is, don't be afraid of silence in an interview for all 3 types: phone, video, and in person. I've also interviewed people for positions, and I've also interviewed to get a role, to get a job myself. And on both sides, I appreciated when someone took time to process a question, wrote down some notes, and then answered. Because I think taking some time to think, especially if it's a question you weren't prepared for or you haven't heard, it's okay to pause, gather your thoughts, and then answer. So definitely don't be afraid of silences, of pauses, things like that. I forgot this other thing that I was going to say. I'm so sorry. But do you have anything what did you think about the pauses?
No, I love that. I love that because it prevents rambling. And that's something I literally just told my supervisor that I need to work on when responding to her, because I wasn't like, I'm an anxious person. I didn't say that.
Yeah.
But I am. And when I get asked a question by my supervisor, who is super kind, I will often become afraid or be like, she'll be like, did you see that email about blah, 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 blah? And I'll be like, when I did see it, I absolutely saw it, but my mind kind of freezes. And I think I could work on, and maybe communicating this to her would be like, may I
take your hat, sir?
May I take your hat, sir? No, I'd be like, I don't even know how I would say it, because I don't want to be like, may I get back to you on that, because that sounds like I didn't read the email. But something along the lines of, yes, let me just gather my thoughts. Something like that, but in a more professional. I don't know if that's professional, because that's just like, it might be professional, but it's also like awkward. Like, people don't hear that often. Yes, I did. Let me gather my thoughts on it.
Right.
But that is something that I need to do in order to, be prepared to answer her question. And it's not that I didn't read the email. It's that I don't want to sound like a babbling fool.
Right. Even a response like, yes, thank you for that question. And if you're in person or on video, I think nodding your head is okay.
Yes,
showing that you're writing. If you're over the phone, obviously you can't really show that you're nodding your head, but at least say, yes, thank you for that question.
You can even do it, though, because I feel like it goes to back to smiling. It's like, if you smile while you're on the phone, they're not going to see it, but you're going to do everything else that you do when you're smiling. And that includes, like, voice inflection. That's just going to come naturally. You could even do that. I look like a bobblehead when I'm on Zoom. Because I'm like, yeah. No, I don't make those noises. That would be...
Only sometimes.
We actually do make noises before recording an episode.
Yeah.
This is a good suggestion to end on, because it comes after an interview. One thing I highly recommend is always sending a thank you.
Yes. I think that was the thing I forgot. Okay. Perfect.
Yes. I know writing letters is like very could be seen as, oh wow, they really took the time, but I also struggle with that because I can write a letter. It's more that like it's going to get to them later and this might be a fast, recruiting process, and they might be like, oh, they didn't respond to us. So I do or they didn't send a thank you. Like, they will take note of that. That's almost like a requirement, but it's unspoken.
Yeah.
I usually send an email about 4 hours after the interview. I don't want to do it like right after, but it also depends on when the interview is. Like, if the interview's at 12, I'll send it at like 4. So it's, going into the end of the day, but it's not like the end of the day. But even if they see it when they come in the next day, that's, that's fine. But like, as long as you sent it that day and close enough to the interview, but not like, if it comes the day after, I feel like it looks like you forgot, honestly. Maybe not the day after, but
I would say within 1 to 5 hours afterwards is
great. that's
and
within 1 to 5 business days.
Within 1 to 5, not 1 to 5. Yeah,
like, that's how you don't get the job.
Yeah, exactly. And I would also recommend that when you do a thank you note, and again, we're not experts. I just feel like we have to say that. But
that's why it's great, because I'm pretty freshly, out of interviewing. You're interviewing right now, so this is just like a layman's perspective on what it's like to interview.
Yeah, but I would say for the thank you notes, definitely include specific things you talked about as well, so that it's an opportunity to show that you listened in the interview, you care about the job, and you researched the position, and you are truly grateful. Like, if you want and you realize, okay, I don't want this position after the interview, you can totally bullshit your way through a thank you. But I think it's still important to be like this, like, I appreciated talking about X, Y, and Z.
Oh yeah.
And yeah. So
and you
having
never
specifics.
know. Yeah, you never know, like, you might apply for a different position down the road with them, or they might know someone. LinkedIn is a connected place.
Right.
Do you have any questions for me? No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, exactly.
So I really like.
I actually do have a question for you. Not gonna lie.
So do you?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, what is it?
We can keep this in. Maybe we don't keep this in. Maybe we make a bonus episode. But my cousin is in HR and hires people. So maybe as a bonus episode for this, we could ask her. We could just do like a quick episode of asking her some questions about advice and what the other side is from an official HR standpoint.
That would be cool. That would be really cool.
I could reach out.
I would love to. Yes, definitely.
But do you have any questions for me?
I do not. I really enjoyed this episode a lot. I think it was helpful for me to even just like gather my thoughts on the matter, even though I'm not interviewing right now.
Sure, yeah, and I was excited to have this episode too, like I said, so this was a lot of fun. So hopefully we made some sense. My name is Justin Dew.
Oh, and I'm Nick Gervasi.
You can reach us at our email, pointofdewpodcast@gmail.com, or by sending us a voice message on our website, anchor.fm/pointofdew. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Point of Dew Podcast and Twitter at Point of Dew. If you enjoy our show, give us a rating or review in the Apple Podcast Store, or share us with a friend or family member. We really appreciate it and are always grateful for your support. Thank you for a year of supporting this show. We hope you have a wonderful week. Thank you for listening, and until next time.
Don't say that you have to go to the bathroom on an interview. H. This time the colors